Hello and welcome to my channel, everybody. I realised that over the past few weeks and month maybe or so, I actually acquired quite a few books because it was also my birthday in late September. And so I decided to do a little book haul. The first book that I actually got at a local bookshop quite a while ago, I think actually in early September. And it is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. And so I don't know a lot about this book, but I've seen a lot of people talk about it and liking it quite a bit. And so as far as I know, it is a fantasy story about a world in which magic has disappeared, but now it is starting to come back. Something along these lines, and that sounded really, really interesting, so I had to pick this one up. Next up, you might have seen me reading Illuminae during my Prague and Krakow traveling vlog. And so I absolutely love that book, so obviously I had to get the second one in the series. So again, I don't really know anything about this, I just love the first one. Apparently some people actually say that they prefer the second one, so I'm really, really curious about this. And so what I really loved about the first one in the sci-fi trilogy is how it's told in a way that is very, very different from normal stories that have just a normal kind of text style flow to it. Whereas these books are written almost like a report, like a documentary kind of thing. So there might be transcripts from interviews, there might be video transcripts, there are chat messages, emails, really weird, kind of really difficult to explain things, but I just absolutely loved it because it was such a different reading experience. And I think a book is most of the time the story, but this book also, there was so much about, well, not this one, the Illuminae, there was so much also about just the experience of reading it, and I really, really enjoyed this. I can't wait to pick this one up. My friend Charlotte, who is also an avid reader, recommended This Is Going to Hurt, Secret Diaries of a Junior Doctor by Adam Key. And so, and so this is a non-fiction book, as the title says, by a junior doctor in the NHS in England. And the back says, 97-hour weeks, life and death decisions, a constant tsunami of bodily fluids, and the hospital parking meter earns more than you. Welcome to the life of a junior doctor. Scribbled in secret after endless days, sleepless nights, and missed weekends, Adam Kay's diaries provide a no-holds-barred account of his time in the NHS frontline. Hilarious, horrifying, and heartbreaking. This is everything you wanted to know, and more than a few things you didn't, about life on and off the hospital ward. And so while I don't live in England anymore, I do have some friends who were working in the NHS. I've obviously made use of the NHS while I was living in England, and I'm just really, really curious about what life is like for the medics that are, saving people's lives and quite often are in some way actually putting their own lives in danger just because their work schedule can be so hectic and so stressful. So I'm really, really curious about this. Also, I like that Stephen Fry actually wrote a recommendation sort of thing for it that says painfully funny, which, given the content of this, yes, I can see how it might be painful, and I can also see how it might be absolutely hilarious and depressing. So yes, I'm really, really excited about this one. Next up, there are 4 books that I got for my birthday that are kind of a random mix of things that I've been interested in recently. And these ones are all non-fiction. First, there's a book that my mum gifted to me, which is What is Mathematics Really? By Reuben Hersh. And so this is about the philosophy of mathematics, which is something that I've been getting really into recently. It says most philosophers of mathematics treat it as isolated, timeless, ahistorical, inhuman. Reuben Hersh argues the contrary, that mathematics must be understood as a human activity, a social phenomenon, part of human culture, historically evolved and intelligible only in a social context. Mathematical objects are created by humans, not arbitrarily, but from activity with existing mathematical objects, and from the needs of science and daily life. So I'm really, really curious about this. I read really good reviews about this on Goodreads. I think I first came across this book when reading through some book recommendations on the 3 Blue 1 Brown channel, which I'll be linking down below as well, which is kind of explaining maths in a really, really fascinating and really well illustrated way. And so from there, I decided that I really needed to know more about the philosophy behind this. And I've always loved maths, but I don't really know a lot about the philosophy and the history of the philosophical ideas that are kind of the backbone of what mathematics is. So, what is mathematics really? This is a book that my husband gave to me for my birthday, which I had seen, I think when we were in London in a bookshop. And it is The Cloudspotter's Guide, The Science, History and Culture of Clouds. And I love that the author, Gavin Pretor-Pinney, is the founder of the Cloud Appreciation Society. And the blurb of this one says, where do clouds come from? Why do they look the way they do? And why have they captured the imagination of timeless artists, romantic poets, and every kid who's ever held a crayon? Veteran journalist and lifelong skywatcher, Gavin Pretor-Pinney reveals everything there is to know about clouds, from history and science to art and pop culture. Cumulus nimbus stratus and the dramatic and surfable morning glory cloud are just a few of the varieties explored in the smart, witty and eclectic tour through the skies. I just love looking up at the sky, so both at night at the stars, but also during the day just at the cloud formations that you can see. And quite often I have noticed that there are some really fascinating things in there. So sometimes when the sun is at just the right angle, you can see something called a sundog, which is this really beautiful and fascinating phenomenon. I'll be linking in the description below as well, so you can go check that out on Wikipedia. And so I've always found clouds really fascinating, and I'm really happy about this book. I've started reading it a little bit, as I'm a few pages into it, and I just love the wittiness in which the author is describing this, and how he's kind of not quite taking himself too serious as, you know, the founder of the Cloud Appreciation Society, but also how this book is drawing together all the people who have this appreciation for, well, the skies. And there are actually some really beautiful pictures in here that members of the Cloud Appreciation Society have taken and have shared for this book. And lastly, there are two books that are in German that I also wanted to mention because I got them for my birthday. And so first we have Hoffnung Mensch, Eine bessere, Welt, möglich, which translates roughly to Hope for Humanity, a better world is possible. And it is also a philosophical book where the author, Michael Schmidt-Salomon, is asking about whether humans are intrinsically good or bad. And so he's looking at things like the evolution of technology, art, ethics and morals, and is saying that there is indeed hope for humanity, that we are getting to be more humane with each other and with the environment. So I'm really curious about this. I haven't actually started reading this, but it sounds really fascinating. And I think particularly in the times where we live, where sometimes things can feel quite hopeless, I'm really curious about this idea that, yes, there is hope for humanity, and we have made huge strides towards a better world and a more humane way of living together. And lastly, this is the book that my mother-in-law sent to me for my birthday, which is London Calling, als Deutsche auf der Brexit-Insel, which translates to London Calling, as a German person on Brexit Island. And so it is written by the ARD journalist, so that's like the German version of the BBC, who actually lives in London and who lived there also when the Brexit referendum happened. And so this is her story of exploring the social change, I guess, that has happened since the referendum. And she's talking to people on both sides of the argument, as far as I know, about their motivation, their worries, their fears, their aspirations, their hopes, all these things. And it's really fascinating, obviously, because I myself was in England. Well, actually, on the day of the referendum, I wasn't in England, but I lived in England for 12 years, also across that kind of what now feels like this massive fault line in my life, which was the Brexit referendum. And while I personally, fortunately, didn't experience any negative impacts personally, the decision to move away from England was definitely in a large part influenced by the Brexit referendum. And so this is kind of a very personal thing for me in a sense, because, well, it made me move across countries. So I'm really curious about reading this book, particularly also from a German person's perspective while living in England, because it is obviously a shared experience. And obviously her being older than I am and being a journalist, she has a very different take on it, but I'm really, really curious about this book, and I think it might actually also help me to maybe let go a little bit, because it is still something I struggle with. I do miss England a lot. I miss having lived there. It is part of who I am. And so I think this book might actually really help me to maybe get some distance from this whole Brexit dilemma. So these are all the physical books that I got recently. There are also a bunch of audiobooks that I've been listening to, as well as Kindle books. But I think I mentioned them all in my recent reading vlogs, as well as in my what I'm currently reading video. So go check those out. Alright, until next time, see you, bye!